Welcome back to Green and White, brought to you by Argyle Life. It's me, James Stables, of One Team in Devon, here to pick the bones out of Argyle's dismal defeat to Swansea and then cremate those bones on a big bonfire of Argyle's championship status. It used to be illegal to kill or maim a swan in England, but it was the swans that did the damage last night as Argyle were blown away in the first half. It was yet another away day horror show for Argyle and another display devoid of fight, passion, or any semblance of quality. I said that if I would only start dreaming of survival if we beat Swansea, but I'm still angry and upset anyway. Here with me is Sam. Sam, a worthwhile trip to Wales last night?
No.
And Graham, you actually went along last night. But which League One ground are you most looking forward to visiting next season?
If they stay in the league, Burton Albion, only because I want to do a crawl round the pubs of Burton, which is something I've never done.
Sign me up. Sam, start with a match run through. I think we'll keep it short and sweet tonight, but kick us off. Which do you think was the worst moment of the 90 minutes and why?
Yeah, I know you said to keep it short and sweet, but I'm going to struggle to narrow it down to one, to be honest. I mean, it was almost like watching some kind of slapstick comedy show out there, to be honest. That's how bad it was. It was, that's just my overriding emotion. I mean, people knowing my views may expect me to come on and have a moan at Muslich and have a moan at the tactics, and maybe I might do that a little bit later on. But you know what? I don't know what he's meant to do to some extent when there were so many individual errors as there were last night. I mean, was it Mumba passing the free kick directly to their player that was the worst moment? Was it Randall giving the ball away in the centre circle and then not getting back in time to stop the first goal? Was it, Katic being put on his backside for that big chance that would have made it 4-0 before half-time? Was it that great save Hazard had to make only came about because Sorinola let his man go and then was, too busy complaining for offside, for the follow-up? Was it the Puhatch pass out from the back, which led to Katic, sort of swinging a foot at it and then letting their striker in one-on-one for another big chance? Was it giving away Randall such a sloppy free kick to which Bundu failed to completely pick up the man? Was it that? Was it Hazard being completely flat-footed for the third? I could go on, probably. I genuinely think I could. The amount of individual errors were abysmal. And I think from the fact that I've probably had a moan at least 7 or 8 of them by name there shows that I'm not picking one individual person. Obafemi scooping it up into the air when he was one-on-one. That was another one. Then Obafemi getting one-on-one again, the other side, and just sort of running it into the keeper's arms. Yeah, also pretty dreadful. Like I say, it was a great number of individual errors. Yes, I think maybe tactically there's some discussion to have, and maybe we'll come on to that later. But yeah, I mean, any of the above, I guess, for the worst moment. I think probably the free kick was maybe the most, even though it was not incredibly consequential because it was 0-0 very early in the game and didn't lead to a chance. I think that free kick directly to their player was perhaps the most slapstick moment. I guess the most consequential one was probably the opening goal, because at that point it would, as Graham always says, concede the first goal, we don't do very well. At that point, it was a very, very tough trip back. But yeah, all of those moments in that long chronicle I mentioned, I do feel sorry, James, for time that I did have to mention all of them, just because A, so that I'm not, being accused of singling out certain players, and B, that we just detailed the sheer number of cock-ups that were made, because it was an incredibly large amount. And when you make that many stupid individual mistakes, yes, we can have a legitimate conversation about tactics, game plan, and maybe we will later in the show. But when you make that many stupid mistakes, you're always going to be on the back foot, no matter how well you set up or how badly set up you are. And that was, lucky to only lose 3-0 in my view.
I think you're right. I think we're very lucky not only to lose 3-0. I think it'll be 6 or 7, quite low. I think if you want to point the finger at XG for not really being much of a metric, I think the fact that they only managed to muster up 2.7 and they seemingly missed about 4 open goals would put question marks over the
I think with that, just XG. Briefly, I think some of it was that they themselves didn't take the best moment to shoot. They kind of had a real big opening to shoot, and then they kind of, with a couple of them, then sort of ran into a more awkward angle. So I think that is potentially a weakness of XG there. But and I suppose, to be fair, their third goal was probably about a 0.01 XG, wasn't it? So that probably cancels out the goals that did go in. But yeah, no, they completely dominated Argyle. They deserved to win by at least the margin they did, if not quite a bit more.
I want to ask Graham about Muslic's comments. Obviously, people don't necessarily go and watch the Argyle TV interviews or catch up on this. So I'll just pick a few bits out. Muslic saying it's a pattern. Every time we have the opportunity to get closer, every time we have the opportunity to make a big step, means towards safety, we can't. We simply can't. It was Cardiff at home, it was Derby, it was Sheffield Wednesday, Hull away. The same patterns every time we're closer, every time we prepare everything to make the next step after wins, after good performances, we simply disappear. And then sort of finishes up. Against Norwich, we had every single first touch on a set piece. Against Watford away, 16 out of 18 first touches in the box. So actually excellent. It's difficult to explain. Some days we show what we're capable of. Other games, it looks like we've never had to defend a set piece before. Graham, what do you think? What did you think of Muslic's post-match comments after that? Fair, or should he shoulder some responsibility?
I think they're fair. I would say very much the same. I mean, having been to the Watford game, and then you look at the Swansea game, what I can't understand, this is a must-win game. And within 2 minutes, I knew we were going to get hammered. And the moment was Mumba up against Ronald on the right wing. It went past him. But the thing for me was, if you try not to lose, you would stick your foot out, you would dive, do everything to try and stop that cross coming in when he's beaten you. And he didn't. And then Randall didn't track O'Brien until too late. And I just thought, we're going to get hammered. And then you look on the other side, Sorinola was led a merry dance. They played 2 wide men, and our back three were very narrow, and there was acres of space for them to play. And neither Mumba nor Sorinola had the pace to deal with the 2 wide players. And as we were discussing before going live, those 2 players cost 1 million for the South Korean Eon, and the other one was between 1 and 2 million from the Portuguese League Two, Ronald. And they were 2 of the best wide players I've seen this season. So there is obviously talent around that you can pick up. But I thought it was, first half, Swansea played the way that perhaps Shuey used to play. You know, playing out from the back, quick, sharp movements. They weren't particularly big physical team. They had a few at the back who were physical, but they were all quick, energy, bang, bang, bang. And their passing was, I think their passing success rate was 84%. But most tellingly, our accuracy passing was 56%. For a championship side, with championship players allegedly, you should not be recording a figure of 56% when it's a must-win game. And what I would observe, and for those, I would recommend watching the David Frio interview that Aaron and Sam did. And he said about Paul Sturrock setting up teams for home and away. We don't. And if it was me, I would have played with the back 5 started off. I would never have let those 2 wide players gain the advantage so early on. The game was over within, I mean, we're lucky before the free kick, and that's another story how that goal came about. But they were just running through us. We should have started off 5. I mean, Paul Sturrock used to play 5-4-1. I'm not saying, but a variant of that. We did not want them to get a fast start. And it was Cardiff all over again. And boy, do I hate Wales. I've been to Wales twice, 8 goals, we haven't scored 1, and it was probably 2 of the worst performances. But I will criticise Miram Muslic for playing 3-4-3 with the 3 centre backs so narrow. You know, you go on Match of the Day and they have that sort of cross-hatched area of space. Well, crikey, it was virtually a third of the pitch, both sides. No wonder they must have been rubbing their hands with glee every time they got the ball in midfield, ping it wide. Neither Mumba or Sorinola could deal with the wide players, and we were in trouble. And I thought it was going to be 5 or 6, and thankfully, I think the number 9 didn't have his shooting boots on. Otherwise, it would have been. So
for your money, it's a setup. We were set up to be open.
It rather got missed a bit, but second half we played 4-2-3-1, and funny enough, the wide players never had the same freedom. Never really got. Fair actually didn't have the best of games, but they weren't so effective. And Bailey Mumba was playing in the front of in the 3. That's his best position. It was best position in the Shuey. He doesn't have to have any defensive responsibilities particularly, because let's be honest, that's not his strong point by any means. But we passed the ball. We didn't lump it. We did. I thought, hello, we can actually play a different system with the players that we've got. And when I did a bit of research on the Cercle Bruges, and Mueslich didn't always play 3-4-3. He varied it a lot. So maybe that's what we should be doing. We haven't got the players. Yes, by all means, hit it long for playing out the back. Because look, was it the Josh Key goal when Hazard played it out to Such? He played it to Sorinola and we lost it. We've got to cut that out. But playing through as we did second half, we looked at a better side. I mean, I know they probably took their foot off the gas a bit, but he can play a different way if he wants to. But 3-4-3 with narrow centre backs against 2 potent wingers, sorry, that was a mistake and it shouldn't have happened. And I think we lost the game in the first 10 minutes as a result.
This is going to be a bit of an odd one because me being probably the most critical of Muslich and his perhaps lack of tactical flexibility of all the regular panelists on this podcast, I absolutely agree with Graham in theory that I've been saying a long time we should try forward at the back, we should be more adaptable, we can play out a little bit more. But then again, when we did go to forward at the back, yes, we maybe had some slightly better moments in terms of with the ball, but then when we did go to forward at the back, there was perhaps 3 of their biggest chances came in that 5 to 10 minute spell, not long after the second half regime. There was that one that whizzed across goal that Puac didn't pick up his man and Vipotnin put it wide, goodness knows how. There was the one where Sorinola let his man go and Hazard made a great save from Eon. And then, like I said, there was the one where Puac played out very poorly and Katic swings a foot at it half-heartedly. So I don't really know why I'm sort of emphasising this point, given that he sort of did what I wanted him to do. But I guess perhaps I should always fight against my own confirmation bias because I've been saying constantly, let's try and be a bit more flexible. Let's go to forward at the back. And if I'm being honest, then when we did do that, yes, we did, once things settled down, we maybe looked a little bit better, but for 10 minutes of doing that, we looked, if anything, even worse. So it's a real tough balancing act to find, in that respect. I do think that it's yes, you can make adaptations with the formation. I think the style of football it's something that needs to be adapted to. Or like I said, I wanted to give credit where due, and I don't want to have too much confirmation bias, but I did say Watford we adapted a bit better. Norwich we adapted a bit better, admittedly helped by some stupid mistakes by them. But I feel that yesterday, certainly in the first half, maybe a bit less so in the second, as Graham says, but certainly in the first half, it was every time we got them, it was kind of like we regressed back to what we were a few weeks ago. Every time we got the ball, we were just treating it like a hot potato. It was lumping up the pitch, hoofing up the pitch, and it was painful. And like, there's got to be a bit of that in its tactical direction because, yes, there were individual mistakes made, but as Graham said, you can't let the tactics entirely off the hook. It's 3 narrow centre backs, and we were pushed in. They were using the wide areas very well, and because it's such a narrow ship to begin with, what was then happening was Such on the right side and Pleggy on the left were having to be dragged out to basically cover the space of the incoming winger, and that left space in the middle for the central midfielders to run through to, and then even the wing backs were then even the Swansea fullbacks were coming forward and overlapping, and it was causing real problems.
Yeah, but Sam, this is where the centre midfield, and I think I mean, we've got weaknesses all over, and I am indebted to Whelan 11 on Passotti for this statistic. When JB and Randall have played together, we played 19 games, won none, drawn 7 and lost 12 with a minus 32 goal difference. We can see it. It doesn't work. Funny enough, JB and Houghton or Houghton and Randall work better, but JB and Randall do not work well together. And Adam had one of his worst passing performances of the season. And I always remember Chris Wilder of Sheffield United, and it's coming up Saturday. So if you want to stop Plymouth playing, you jump on Randall because he's the pivot, he's the king point. And that's what they did. And how many times did he lose the ball? And then with Pleggy, and they cocked it up between them and gave away that reckless tackle, which led to the second goal. I mean, it was, it was a must-win game. And after the second goal, the heads were down. That was it. There was not, where's the leadership? There was no rallying cry. You couldn't hear them getting on with each other. Katic was arguing with Hazard, then Katic went over to Music and gave him what for about somebody. I never quite worked out who it was, but he really had a set to with him.
Randall was having a bit of a go at the centre backs as well, quite a lot.
Yeah, and it's breaking down. The team spirit that we were so good at Watford with, really good with Norwich with, evaporated within minutes. Their heads were gone, and it's happening time. How many times has it happened this season where literally we've collapsed? What a word! What a word! We've collapsed as a team, and whether it be Wayne Rooney or whether it be Miran Music, we've collapsed as teams, and we should never be doing that. And that's got to be. I mean, Miran's a great speaker, a great motivator. So you can see him in the dressing room motivating and pumping them up. And then within a few minutes, that's all gone. I mean, I'd be steaming if I was him, seeing what I saw. No wonder he took 3 of them off at half time. It was lucky it was only 3.
Yeah, they are. But then as you say, it is sowing the seeds of his own destruction. He keeps playing JB, in my view, at all, certainly next to Randall, because I think Randall, there's no getting away from it. Randall had a worse game than JB last night. And I love Randall, you know that. I'm probably the second biggest fan of Adam Randall, the biggest being Aaron. But I really like Randall, but he had a abysmal game. And it's almost like if you ever sort of played or watched your mates play at six-a-side, you have a player. Everyone knows sort of that one sort of six-side player who makes one mistake and then the head goes to the rest of the game. And that was a bit like probably what Randall was last night. He made that mistake early doors, overplayed it, and then didn't get back in time to track O'Brien. And then his head went for the rest of the game. And he obviously had that nasty tackle that he got booked for. Goal comes into the resultant free kick. However, despite that, and I do think Randall had an absolute stinker, and I think he will probably be the first one if he's watching this, and I hope he's not, because I hope the players have, got better things to do than watch this. I think Miran will be probably going through the video nasty with them today without hearing us having to say similar stuff. But if he is watching this, I think he would have probably agreed. He'd be the first to put hands up and admit he had a complete stinker, But I do think with Randall, we have seen what a good player he can be this season. We have seen some games where he has, certainly under Rooney and less so, but still occasionally under Muslic, whereby he has really made the team tick, and he has dragged what would be an otherwise mediocre performance up to a decent one just through his composure in the midfield, the way he plays the ball down, the way he uses space well, the way he has good spatial awareness, the way he allows players around him to thrive. But I do think as much as we often see that, we weren't seeing it at all. JB, has maybe one good game every 7 or 8, and that's about it, really. And when he does have his good games, it generally tends to be maybe off the bench or next to somebody who isn't Randall. I think Randall is a very good player on his day, but he is perhaps prone to having the odd stinker. And JB is, perhaps that's the opposite. He's bad more often than he's good, but when he's good, he can occasionally be very, very good. But those two as a unit don't work at all. And what I don't get whatsoever is every time I literally said it on this show on Sunday night. Every time we go back to Houghton and Randall, it works out for the better, you know. And then we did go back to Houghton and Randall, and immediately the very next game we went back to Randall and JB. You know, blimey, if you're absolutely insistent on playing JB, maybe even give Houghton and JB a go, because at least then you've got Houghton, who's a bit more defensive and a little bit more consistent to cover for JB's lapses. You know, I would just play Houghton and Randall. I've made that very clear. But if you must play JB, you know, maybe just at least play Houghton with him. I don't know. It's and whilst I'm on the mood of a rant on the central midfielders, what on earth is happening with Boateng? We've all had a conversation about Beidou and Al Hajj and the fact that they were signed for Miran Muslic. You know, they weren't his signings, and at the minute they've been frozen out of the team. They're not even making the squad. Now we can have our own debate about that, but maybe a more tactically flexible manager could find a way to get a tune out of them, certainly Al Hajj, but you can at least have the excuse with those two that they weren't Miran signings, that maybe he just doesn't fancy them, whatever. But Boateng is a central midfielder who was signed on deadline day, who, looking at his profile, his physical profile, his stats, clips of him that I've seen, even the performance at Man City, where he was pretty damn good, he pretty much entirely fits the profile of what a Muslic central midfielder would be. Muslic even said in the interview piece on the official site that he fits the physicality profile. He's quite tall, he's strong, he's quick. So this is a Miran Muslic tailor-made central midfielder. We've signed him for about $500,000 or more on deadline day, and he can't even get into a 20-man squad. What does that say about the coherency and the cohesion of our recruitment policy and integration policy?
Sam, I just want to say he was seen limping the other day at Home Park, so he actually might be injured. And I agree with you. He's shown enough to show he's better than to be. He's good enough to be playing every game at least 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But ask Chris Errington or Alan Richardson. Ask the question.
It's not really
tomorrow in the press conference.
Yeah. Sorry to cut across it. Normally they do in the press conference. They will ask it. But the fact they haven't asked it about Boateng kind of made me just assume that it's just another case of Al Hajj and Beidou that he's not being selected. If he is injured, I'll hold my hands up. But they've not really communicated that very well, if that's the case.
When I was at the Watford press conference, Muslic basically said he left Boateng out tactically to give TJ a spot on the bench. So he definitely wasn't injured at Watford. So he obviously could have picked up a knock in over the last week. But
so even if you have my point still applies for the previous games. You know that we've spent yes, for the Championship standards, it's not a mega expensive signing, 750k. That's what it's rumored to be. But for our standards, for the disposable income we have, that's a good chunk of money, by the way. And we've spent that money on a player who is the exact profile the manager wants, and he's just not getting any action at all in a relegation fight. We may as well just be throwing money down the drain. What's going on with that? You know, it's pretty shocking.
Well, I was going to say we saw Al Hajj received before we left lunchtime yesterday, and he said, "Well, you're not in the squad." He said, "No," and he just shrugged his shoulder and said, "That's football." So, we've got signings that I'm struggling to see will be with us next season.
Well, that's Beidou was a reported 1.3 million. Al Hajj was a reported about 0.8, 0.9, and then Boateng was maybe about 0.7, 0.8.
I heard it was 400, Sam, but
fair enough. That is even so. Maybe that is at least 2.5 million of talent, maybe more like 3 million, not getting in the squad. What on earth does that say about our recruitment and our integration? Something's going so badly wrong. It's frightening.
Yeah, especially if we end up going 4-2-3-1 at the end of yesterday's game, and that would be a system that would fit definitely Al Hajj. And I don't think he's looked too bad this season. So when he has come on,
it fit Mumba playing further up. So he could play Bundu up top, and we're clutching at straws a bit. The truth is, we've got players who have not been of Championship standard for enough games this season. It's inexplicable that we can play well in certain games and we don't in others. But Swansea last night, who wanted it the more in the first 2 minutes? They did. They were honest. Yeah. And it was almost as though, we could see it was unfolding before our eyes what was going to happen.
Yeah, you know what? I can't argue. I generally try and steer away from the old cliche of it's about who wanted it most, because there's so many variables. There's fitness, tactical, technical, and I feel it can sometimes be a cliche. You said you didn't want it enough, but the fact that it's a cliche in general doesn't mean it's never true. And I do feel that something about that performance, like when the lads who I was watching the game have said it, even when I was messaging to and from my dad, he said it right from the first minute or two. You could just tell something was not right collectively with that.
Absolutely,
heads were down. There wasn't anybody who was geeing everyone else up, and if they were, it was only to have a go at each other. It was only to argue on the pitch. There was no positivity, no positive energy, no never say that. I'm not going to say there was no effort, because if there was no effort, we would have been beaten even more. But I feel they gave up, is what happened. And whether that's just the case that we were 3-0 down, they thought, we've got a game on Saturday at 12:30, maybe conserve a bit of energy. Maybe from that point of view, you could semi-justify it, but they gave up. That's all I can say. And heads were wrong. Something was visibly wrong from the first couple of minutes. Like, if any of you watch the Pie Face vlogs that I also appear on, he said that there's a quote from Mauricio Pochettino when he was Spurs manager, saying, being the manager of this team, I can tell within the first 5 minutes whether we're going to play well or not. And I think I would very much borrow that quote for Argyle, because that's very much true. It's very much true of us as well. You
just know it on Saturday, because I think it's like strangely, how many people went out of the 1,200 or so that went up thought we got a chance tonight? I can see us winning. There's hardly any talk of us going to get hammered like Cardiff. And strange, perversely, Sheffield United, we've got no chance really, and then suddenly we may have, and that's us all season. We do play slightly better against the better teams, but we made Swansea look good. We made them look good, but how many of their players would we want in our team? Run through them, 1 to 11 or whatever their numbers are, but the 11. Virtually all of them we would prefer to be in our team. Virtually all of them. And that's the mid-table team, and that's what we got to aspire to. And yes, I know they've overspent by about 14 million this season to achieve it, but they have actually acquired players. I think they spent a total of 8 million over buying 12 players. Well, look at them. I mean, look at their goalkeeper's decent. Made a terrific save from Randall's free kick when it was 1-0. But, man for man, they were better than us, and they're mid-table. That's the Championship, and that's, it's a big gap to climb, and we're not making it. The way things are at the moment, the best we can look forward to is a bottom 5 finish and sweat on relegation battle every season.
Let's get back on track. A few players had a sort of biblical stinkers last night, and we were looking at sort of a recurring pattern of terrible away performances and this style of defeat. When we normally pick out a couple of players, Randall and Mumba were all over the place last night after having rave reviews at home to Norwich. Is this part of the problem that our best players, or we regard as our best players, putting in such mixed performances? And does that speak to the ceiling of the team that we just said, that we're just as a squad not good enough to produce consistent Championship performances? I'll give that to Pam first, and Graham chime in.
I kind of go back to what I said in my first answer. I do think there are legitimate problems with the tactical inflexibility. I mean, look, I want to just go back a little bit without going on too much of a horrific tangent to what I said in the Norwich pod. I do feel I said my head is telling me reasons why we can get a result, but my gut is telling me that Argyle are just going to do an Argyle and follow a good performance with a bad one and get beat. And in a way, my gut was right. But you know what? I do feel that even if we had, buckled down and kept a cohesive shape and cut out the stupid mistakes, we still probably would have lost anyway. We, certainly would have lost in a much more respectable way. But I feel we probably would have lost anyway, just because tactically we were outclassed to some extent. So I think that you have to look at all the factors. You have to look at the way the team's set up tactically, but then again, you also have to look at why so many players seem to have the wrong mindset of just letting their heads drop and giving up. But you know what? When you go through the squad man for man, it's not a atrocious squad. Yes, it's by no means a great squad, and yes, there are in the majority of areas of the pitch you would rather have Swansea than ours. But this is not a squad of players that I've been totally inept at Championship level. Like I say, Randall, I know he was, maybe Jekyll and Hyde. He was certainly Mr. Hyde last night, but he certainly can have a very good game. Mumba has done well at this level. Hardy has done well at this level. The centre backs, Pleguezuelo, he's fast become a fan favourite, hasn't he? Katic has played in the Europa League, played for Rangers. In I think in their possibly, I think it was in their good Europa League run, but certainly when they were a very solid team in Europe. So this is not just a bunch of absolute League Two players playing in the Championship by any stretch of the imagination. And I think if you look at our squad man for man, is it much worse than Oxford or Pompey's, who are a few positions above us in the league? I would say not. Maybe better in some areas, worse in others. But I think our squad is every bit as good, if not better than those. And Derby, are they that much better than us? Even you look at Hull, they last season they were an incredible team. They lost 3 or 4 of the best players. If you look at Hull man for man this season, are they that much better than us? That we should be going and getting humiliated like this. So I know I've kind of answered your question with a bit of a ramble where I haven't really, committed to a firm answer. Maybe I've been a bit of a politician, but I do feel that it would be an oversimplification just to say I hate this squad. They're a bunch of, bottle jobs. They're a bunch of whats and just get rid of them. Because I do feel that man for man, this squad does have something to offer. It's the same players who we're now so angry about are the same players we were so happy about after Saturday's game. I feel the consistency is an issue, and the tactical setup and flexibility is an issue, and the how can I put this in a way that's not being flippant about about mental health, sort of so extreme to and fro's of mentality, because it seems like they're on top of the world one minute and they're on the very bottom of the world the next. And look, football is a very tough game, and there are real people there. So I suppose maybe I'm not qualified to talk about what's going on inside their heads, but I feel that the people who are qualified and who are paid to do that job, they need to be examining that, because I don't know how we can have a performance on Saturday when we're so on it. Everyone's geeing up the crowd. Everyone's got their arms around each other's shoulders at full time. There's such an incredible sense of togetherness. To then go to Swansea on Wednesday night and have that utter shambles, and nobody looks like they want to be there. They're all arguing with each other. It's, they give up fighting after going 3-0 down. How does that mentality go from one extreme to the other in the space of 4 days? It's perhaps the question I'm asking. So I don't think we need to completely get rid of the squad. I do feel that if we go down, the nucleus of this squad is good enough to get us back up. But I think something needs to be done about A, the tactics, lack of flexibility, B, the selection, and C, the tendency to completely collapse mentally. And that's where my stance is, I guess. And I'm sorry, that was a longer answer than you probably wanted. I'll let go next.
Yeah, well, 2 things to say. Have we won 2 league games in a row this season?
We have West Brom and Millwall with Liverpool in between. So that was technically in a row. Yeah,
but 2 home games. 2 home games. So we haven't done a home and away, have we?
Well, no, we've only won 1 away, full stop. And that was
exactly. So that's one of the problems. I mean, teams get out of relegation trouble by stringing 3 wins in a row, possibly 4, like Derby did. And when you don't do that, you're never going to catch up. But I come back to my favourite. We don't score first. And when we don't score first, we're up against it. Against Norwich, we got a couple of early-ish goals. Crowd were up. The rest is history. But when we concede first, home or away, we just seem to implode. And that's part of the problem. I mean, I'm less worried at home because the crowd, as long as they can see the players are trying, the crowd can get them back. Like the Preston game where we were 3-0 down. You know, we scored, we get another one. The crowd got us back in the game. But if you don't score first, I mean, if Sheffield United score first on Saturday, that's it. I can't see us coming back. But if we score first on Saturday, the crowd will be up and it'll be a different game. Actually, Miran Music actually said as much in one of the press conferences. Scoring first is important, and we just don't do it. We don't come out of the blocks. We don't look like we're going to score first.
Yeah, he did, and as a key part of his post-match interview was touched on that as well. I guess to call out another play, obviously Mumba had another shocker last night. Even in I think a great run of videos on the Voodoo Twitter account showed him passing the ball inexplicably from a free kick on the halfway line in the first, just after the first minute, really set the tone.
Yeah,
1 assist this season, but we've been clamoring for him to get back into the 11. Is it good enough? Is this part of the issue? Does this show where we're at?
I mean, my own view, I think Adam was waxing fairly lyrical about his performance against Norwich, which was good going forward, but they didn't actually put him under much pressure defensively. If you're any team in the Championship and Barley's left wing back, you are going to target him, because if you look at the way he defends, he's sideways on. And that guy just pushed the ball past him. He was gone. And he had no chance. And Daniel Farker knew it. That's why he sold us. That's why he let him go to us for £1 million. He said he's not a left back nor a left wing back. I like him further further up. I'm not sure about him as a 10 because he hasn't got the physicality. But in a 4-2-3, I think he works quite well, because he's got the ability to take players on and do something. But I've just got a hunch he won't be with us next season, whether we stay up or not.
Sam, Miron, could he be getting more out of this squad? The history of the last season, with the tone of the first game, Sheffield Wednesday, 2 different managers, 2 very, very different styles, different personalities, different tactics, different levels of professionalism, I guess. They couldn't be more different, and they're getting the same results. So what does that tell us?
Well, there's 2 conclusions you can take from that. One is the conclusion is, well, that just shows, the problem's not the manager, the problem's the squad. And I guess in a way that's the easy conclusion to go to. And I'm not saying that that's totally wrong. I'm certainly not saying it's a great squad. But also, I do think you have to examine the possibility that they're both doing badly in different ways. I think it's easy just to say, well, it's kind of like the old thing of, hey, if I'm being criticised from this side and this side, I must be doing something right. But there is just a possibility that that both managers are doing something wrong. I don't think wrong. They're certainly doing different things wrong. Rooney, it just seemed like his teams weren't coached at all. It seemed like goodness knows, frankly, what they were doing in training all week. They were coming out with no shape, no cohesion. I suppose what you can more charitably say for Muslic is, I think I immediately get a much clearer idea of what he's trying to do, and there are certainly more games that it works. The problem I maybe have there is that he's just too tactically inflexible, and that, yes, whilst there are some games which it works well, I think it is a very one-note system. And whilst we have seen flashes and signs that he is learning to adapt in recent weeks, like I say, I think Watford was a better performance. Norwich was a pretty good performance. I do also, despite all of that, think that overall it is still very, very direct. And I'm certainly going back to yesterday. It was like going back to our very worst old selves, where we weren't even trying to play the ball out. It was just hoof, 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 up the pitch every single time. And that was what was painful to watch, without a shadow of a doubt. So I do think it is easy just to hand wave it and say, oh, well, if all the managers are doing badly, then it must be the squad. But I do think there is more to it than that. Because I do think that we have seen, even in the 2 games under Nance, or the 3 games if you include Brentford, we've we've seen flickers of where the happy medium can work, whereby you have obviously a bit more defensive structure and a bit more organisation than what Rooney was offering, but you also aren't scared of the ball. You aren't treating it like a hot potato. You're not being afraid to use the back three and use the goalkeeper even to play out and to build from the back. So I'm not going to probably give the answer that you may expect me to give from the premise. I'm going to genuinely say I do think that I'm going to stick to my guns on this, and I do think, despite the fact that both head coaches are, on a low points total, I don't think the conclusion from that is just that it's an unusable squad. I think that the squad, as I mentioned in my earlier answer, does have a very talented list of players of the list I mentioned. Even of those I didn't mention in my previous answer, there are a lot of players who have got very good track records elsewhere who, for whatever reason, haven't done it here. I mean, Al Hadj had incredible numbers in Denmark. Beidou had great numbers even in the Europa League, for goodness sake. You can't even use the argument of maybe it's just a bad league. But for whatever reason, we've not got anything out of them at all here. Even Dan Grimshaw, who is absolutely beloved by Blackpool fans, seemed to have a bit of a reputation for Argyle fans as being a bit of a calamity keeper. So I don't think you can put it all on the squad not being good enough. I think you have to question what it is at Argyle that's across two head coaches not getting the most out of that squad. And I say, for me, I did say before the Watford game that it was almost an audition for Muslich, because I don't think we're staying up. The first two games were a pass mark on the audition. You know what? If we'd have went to Swansea and lost narrowly and put in a respectable display, that would probably be a tentative pass mark as well, or at least it wouldn't be a fail mark. But that last night was a big red X of a fail mark for me. And I'm increasingly concerned about next season. If we don't adapt our style a bit more, if we keep this hit and hope, football, not only is it boring to watch, and not only, in my opinion, will the crowds dwindle and will our young players not play a style of football most beneficial to their development, I'm not even sure it will work all that well. So I'm sorry, but for me, Muslich does have some questions to answer going ahead and looking into next season.
So I'm just going to point out all the teams around us, the Cardiff, the Lutons, the Oxfords. One of the things that differentiates them from us is their height, physicality, and energy. And those are the three essential requisites for a Muslich team to play, as he said, we would play. We haven't got height, particularly, certainly haven't got physicality, and clearly we've not got the energy, as last night showed it in abundance. So in terms of to play that way he wants to play, we've got to have two wing backs who are tall and get up and down the pitch. If you look at Muniz for Crystal Palace, that type of player, he's transformed Palace this season in a 3-4-3 because of his ability to get up and down. You look at Robinson for Fulham, the same ability to get up and down. That's what we've got to get wide. Then we've got the two centre mids. Adam's going to be fine. He needs somebody to do the hard yards, the short bursts of intensity to close and press, which Jordan Houghton and Darko JB don't do. JB's got energy, but he hasn't got that burst of pace to press. And then you look at the two tens. We've got Hardy and Bundu, who I think are two of the three, but Callum Wright, certainly Obafemi, are not the right fit for that physical number 10 slot who can alternate with the front three. So those are the areas. And if he recruits in those areas with those players, which the data analysts can highlight, they know how many kilometres players run. And I remember Adam Randall, Senior Green, saying he had to run another kilometre per game to meet the required standards that they were demanding of him. And he's not, I suspect he's not doing that. I'm suspecting JB. I suspect none of them are meeting the dynamic standards that the system requires to be effective. And if they can't get the right recruitment in League One, where physicality is even greater than it is in the Championship, we're going to find wanting again. That recruitment, it isn't the Al Hadjis, it's not the Baidus. Boateng may well fit the system, but that's what we've got to go for. And if we don't do it, we're going to struggle. But I believe in the system, and I was pleased in a perverse way that he adapted it to 4-2-3-1, and I'd like to see more of it, as Sam's indicated, because it's horses for courses, and we should never have set up 3-4-3 against Swansea when they are so potent in their 4-2-3-1 with the two wide players. So if you can be more flexible, if you can recruit the right dynamic, physical, high energy players, then we, and we need somebody, as he calls it, back to goal. He made that point in the press conference. To be fair, Mustafa Bundo's done pretty well in that role. He wins more than his fair share of headers. Perhaps doesn't retain the ball or link up quite as well. But if we can recruit somebody, look, talk about Mickey Evans on the way back last night. Just imagine Mickey Evans, a type player at the head of a Mislic type team. We all remember Paul Sturrock, and again, go back to David Frio interview. How he said they played, shape, organisation, team. That's what's got to be instilled for next season. And if we can do that, I'm more confident than some we'll be okay.
I really hope you're right. But if that is the case, though, what the essential logical corollary of that is that we've appointed a manager, or a head coach to be precise, whose style is totally unsuited to the current squad, on the premise that just maybe if we get the recruitment right, and he does get a squad suited, he could really be like lightning in the bottle, and he could really come good. And if that's the case, that's an enormous show of faith in a head coach that you're appointing a head coach whose style is basically unsuited to the current squad, both A, in terms of what they've played up to now, and B, in terms of their physical profile. They must really think he's something special as a coach if they genuinely think that, despite all the logical reasons why he isn't a good fit for the current squad, that we're going to remold our entire club and our entire squad in his image. And that, to me, is a big risk in its own sense, because if we sign a load of 6'5", land of the giants this summer, and he's sacked,
they haven't got to be all that size. They got to be 6 foot plus, but energetic and mobile. We don't want any more TJs. Thank you very much.
Well, no, we can agree on that. But okay, I'm being a little bit, exaggerating. But if we sign players who and I'm not going to go too extreme. Obviously, you'd like to hope some of them will be able to play a bit of football as well. But if we sign players where the main profile point of us signing them, is their physical profile rather than their technical ability, as appears to have been the case with Boateng, who's not even playing, but that's another rabbit hole. If we continue to sign players on the basis of physical profile ahead of technical ability, and he's then sacked in November with us in mid-table not doing very well, if we then bring in a manager who wants to play, a more passing style again, we basically snookered ourselves, haven't we? Because again, we're remaking the club in his image. And I'm not coming out here and saying sack him. I'm genuinely interested to see what he does in the next few games to give us hope. But that, to me, is a very big risk if we're going to let him make a load of signings to rebuild the club in his image. Because that could, if we're signing athletes rather than footballers, that could go very badly.
No, I think I'm saying we're going to sign players that are doing more than our players are doing at the moment. More kilometres per game, more intensity presses. We're falling short. And I actually look at what's happening in Man United. He's an inflexible 3-4-3, and he hasn't got players to play that system.
Very similar to Miron, isn't it? What's happening?
It is. It is. But I actually, somebody did an analysis. I apologise, I can't remember who it was. And Miron at Cercle Bruges played 4 or 5 different systems. So, he got appointed, let's be honest, because he came out of nowhere. The board were watching, and he wowed him at interview. And let's be honest, he would have wowed all 3 of us, knowing what we know and how he performs and how convincing he portrays it. when you were faced with possibly more of the same as Shuey. But you look at Shuey had to change his style at Stoke because it didn't work. He's had to do the same at Bolton because he's lost 4 of his last 6 games. He's having to change, but he is changing. I hope Mirren can look us in the eye. And part of my frustration is he's been here since January and the fans haven't actually met him. You know, we haven't had a meet the manager where we had that evergreen controlled environment Q&A, but fans want to meet him. They want to talk to me. He could be very convincing for us, but we haven't been able to challenge him. And I actually do blame the club for this.
Well, he was meant to be at that event in February, wasn't he? But
I accept that. I do accept that. But there's still other opportunities. You know, and I'm sure he would do it. I mean, it's too late now. I mean, the opportunity's gone. And I know we had a lot of games in a short period of time, but we've lost that connection. He has credit to him. He's always respectful of the Green Army, more than any head coach manager that we've had recently, I would say. He's always knows the part that we can play. But I just feel we've missed a trick. I've not met him. Have any of you met him? I haven't. So I'd like to see him. Yeah, I'm sure he'd do an hour like this, where he would relish the challenge of being questioned as to why, and we'd have more of an understanding as to why. But that's been missed. You know, and the press conferences are, you know, all due respect to Chris Ross and Alan Richardson, they're a little bit tame. I think Chris did get a bit, asked him a few searching questions a couple of press conferences ago, but the time is to do it again tomorrow. Let's get what's going on. What is it? As you said, Sam, something's missing. What is it? Why can't we put back-to-back wins home and away? I mean, crikey, we got Middlesbrough away, but if we set up right, shape an organisation, and they don't score early, the longer we go on, the more we're in it, and the more Hardy could take one on the quick breakaway and make a goal. I mean, we're capable of doing that. That's how I would have wanted to play last night. Keep them at bay. We know they swarm all over us. Just keep them, shape organisation, but crikey, 2 minutes, game over.
So looking ahead and a little bit further than Saturday, but looking ahead, what do you want to see from Miran Muslic over the remainder games? Because we're obviously down. So would you see him rip the system up, experiment more, play better football, even if it means losing, throw some other players in, play the youth? What do you want to see?
All of the above, I think. I think you've actually summed it up pretty well there. I think all of the above would be quite beneficial. Look, me wanting to see better football, I don't want this to be interpreted as me being one of those fans who's like, you know, maybe like Russell Martin at Southampton, whereby I'm such a purist that we've got to play, you know, tiki-taka, fancy football no matter what. That's not what I'm getting at here. I can take compromise if it works. At the moment, it isn't working, certainly not well enough to keep us in the league and not enough to convince me that he's the right man long-term, if I'm honest. Again, that's not to be interpreted as me saying sack him tonight. I'm saying that I'm very much yet to be convinced. So, yeah, I do think we need to play better football, not just because it's more entertaining, although it is, but not just for that reason, but also because I do feel there is a reason ultimately that there's been such a big tactical shift in the game over the last decade that most teams now play in the Championship and even increasingly down to League One, play a proto-Guardiola style. You know, it's no longer the age of 4-4-2 and big man, little man and quick wingers. There is a reason now that teams try and build possession through the middle of the park. There is a reason why sweeper keepers are becoming more and more common. There is a reason why wing backs and wingers are alternating, cutting inside. It doesn't have to be, you know, peak Guardiola Man City, but it doesn't have to be peak Tony Pulis Stoke either. There can be a bit of a middle ground, and I would like to see us have games where we just take it by the throttle and just go for teams a bit more early on. And even if that means opening up a a little bit, and that's all part and parcel of it. So yes, I would like to see a change of style. One, because it's more entertaining. Far more importantly, because I think it works. And in an age where most teams are possession focused, we've taken a bit too much of a back step. I would like to see more variation on the lineup. I don't see the point in playing JB unless maybe you could make an argument that if this rumour is true that we have to pay Leeds a fine for not paying him, maybe on that basis we should just suck it up and play him to avoid the fine, given that we're already more or less down anyway. You could argue that. But that notwithstanding, I'd want to see Roberts get some time. I'd want to see Boateng get some time. Certainly on whatever happens, whatever happens, don't play that combination again of Randall and JB, because those two, whatever their individual merits, don't work as a duo. So I'd like to see Randall next to either Houghton, Boateng or Roberts, some combination of that three. And I'd like to see Asaka play a bit more. I'd like to see maybe even Tegan Finn get some minutes if he's rumoured to be going in the summer. Seems to be the rumour doing the rounds. Maybe try and bump up his price tag a little bit if we can get him some good minutes. Just a little bit more rotation. Maybe a bit of Ogbeta, because I do feel that he's had a pretty bad first season, but he's a young player with some potential who if Mumba goes in the summer, which I agree with Graham, I think he probably will, and assuming we don't recall Puhatch, because quite frankly, why would be, apart from 3 or 4 games, he's not been very good. Ogbeta, and we're going to release Saxon early, so take those 3 out of the equation. Ogbeta's going to be the only left wing back left at the club over the summer, so I do think we want to give Ogbeta some game time, give Joe Edwards a bit of game time, ideally drop the loanees who are just not going to be here next season. There's no point. Katic may be the only exception because we've not got many centre-backs. That's probably it. More flexibility of the style of football, more entertaining style of football, and more rotation and more variability in the lineups. If we can see that, and if I can see the positive consequences coming from it, then I think I'd say, you know what, this is not really my cup of tea in terms of style, but if I'm seeing a little bit of flexibility, let's give him the summer to build the team, have a bit more physicality, and try and find a happy medium. If I'm not seeing any signs of that, and we're just getting outplayed every week and teams have figured us out, then I may have a very controversial statement to make on the end of season podcast about my view on a manager change, but maybe we'll cross that bridge as and when we come to it. So yeah, that's what I would like to see.
Graham, just to sort of drill into one of those points there on style, the kind of resurgent style in sort of world football that seems to be outweighing its outweighing its budget is a more direct style. We've seen teams fighting out in the European spots in the Premier League at the moment, playing direct football, not the kind of direct football that we've often seen from us, but I assume you would like to think that that style of football is what we're trying to get to. Would you like to see, I'm just piecing together some of your statements earlier and hoping you agree that you'd like to see us hone that style in the sort of end of this season and actually experiment a bit more and actually try and play direct attacking football rather than what we've seen so far, and sort of knuckle down on this system ready for next season when we have to do it with a bit more possession, because that seems to be the only way it's going to work, right?
Yeah, this season has been transitional. If you look at the number of teams that come to home park, and suddenly we got a plethora of long throws. Nearly every team's had a long throw because the statistics show chances are created out of it almost as many as from a corner. So I think, was it the Luton game where Mirror Music said they had over 100 set plays as a result of the long throws and everything. So the game is going that way. Let's be honest, our players haven't got the capability of playing out the back. So hitting the long ball diagonal to one of the corners and trying to win the first ball and the second contact means you're already 2/3 of the way up the pitch. Whereas if you're playing out the back, how long would it take you to get into the same position? So that's why the game is transitioning that way. It means you actually have more of the set plays to play with because you're up in the opposition. But when you couple with that, you've got to have the energy to press and win the duels, as Miron calls it, win the second balls, and critically not have a 56% passing accuracy rate. You just cannot play any game and hope to win with that. It's all right having 30% possession, that's fine, but not giving the ball away with 46% of your passes, giving it to the opposition. That is not acceptable. And
go on. Sorry, go on.
Yes, I go on that. I think I made the point. It's got to. It is capable of improvement and better. And if you look at the goals we scored, or particularly the chance that Hardy nearly scored the third goal with against Norwich, that was really quick transition play down the left, which ironically JB was primarily responsible for, with his dinking run in between players and the slided ball through. It is possible to play transitional football quickly and directly without hoofing it. But we lack composure. We just and I tell you, he's one of the worst responsible. Suddenly, is Such. I don't know what the hell's happened there. He used to be super composed on the ball. He used to stride forward with it. Now he can't get rid of it quick enough. I don't know, it's a confidence thing. He's not got peak fitness after his injury, but he's one of the most guilty parties.
So that's a really good point, Graham, and I do agree on Such. I do feel that under Rooney era, as much as he maybe was a bit overrated in the sense that he made a few defensive bloopers, I do agree he was always, cool as a cucumber on the ball and super composed. And that, to me, if I'm honest, goes back to my main overriding doubt of the Mudlic era. And this is the final word I'll have to say on the style of play piece, because I'm sure we want to get a bit of a mini Sheffield United preview in. But the final word I'm going to say on the style of play piece is this ultra long ball. What if we're all assuming it's a bug? What if it's a feature, not a bug? Because Such being one, Pleggy even being one, obviously Katic, we've not got a reference point to compare against, seeing him under another manager, but he's also one who just hits and hopes more often than not. This, to me, is what if it is genuinely a feature of how he wants to play. And if you look at all of Cercle Bruges' stats in the Belgian league, that every long ball metric, long ball by keeper, long ball by centre-back, pass, Cercle Bruges were massive outliers for having the most in the league. If you look at their passing accuracy, they were outliers for pretty much, even in the year they did well and qualified for Europe, even then they were outliers for one of the lowest passing accuracies in the league. So there is a possibility, again, I'm sorry to be Mr. Misery again, that this is just a feature, not a bug. And if that's the case, the emphasis isn't just on the players to learn it better, although it is part of that. The emphasis is also on Miron to play a little bit more flexibly. And that's why I do have these doubts about him, if I'm being completely honest. And yes, to pick up on a point James said, I do agree that we are over the past maybe 2-3 years seeing a little bit of a tactical trend go back towards direct, slightly more direct styles. Like Bournemouth are quite counter-attacking. They're having a good season. Brighton are quite counter-attacking. They're having a good season. Not Forest counter-attacking. Yes. So, yeah. But what I would say is it's a spectrum, right? I think if you look at where the game was 15, 20 years ago, those teams, not Forest, Bournemouth, Brighton, Palace, are more possession-orientated than a mid-table team was 20 years ago. And if you say the kind of middle level has gone from here, over to here, I'm using my hands for the visual listeners to demonstrate. Maybe it's, if it's gone from, one end of the spectrum to the other, it's maybe shifted a little back to more towards the middle of the spectrum, but it's still more possession-orientated than it was 25 years ago. And I think that Mudlic ball is, at times, and I think it's certainly Bruges it was as well, based on the stats I've given, so far on the direct side of things, it's almost gone off the scale. It was certainly much more direct than Bournemouth or Crystal Palace, who actually played some pretty good counter-attacking football. And again, I'm not trying to be this kind of entitled fan who says we've got to play exactly how I demand, or else. I'm open to a bit of adaptation, but we just need to meet a little bit more in the middle than what we're doing. Because at the minute, it is just Tony Pulis ball. It's one of the things more often than not.
No, is it? I mean, we weren't at Watford we weren't against Norwich.
Those two games, I agree, were better.
So that's, there were a couple of home games. I think Cardiff was one of them where we did resort to that, but only because we were second best in the physicality stakes, comfortably second best. Interesting, going back to the David Freer interview and the Sturrock way, how many long balls did Paul Sturrock play?
Well, it was
and I always remember, I always used to call it the Lee Hodges ball, because he used to hit a diagonal. And funny enough, one of the players that does it in our team, who's unfortunately is injured, is Maxi. Maxi can hit that long diagonal ball. So the long ball per se is not a problem. Its accuracy is the problem, and the composure in which you deliver it. And more importantly, the runs that particularly the 10s, who are vital in that system, are making. Or alternatively, you've got to have a Mickey Evans type, control it, hold it, bring somebody into the game. And if he doesn't do that, you're right, Sam, we're going to look more David Kemp than we are Paul Sturrock. But it was a very, I go back to the Freo interview, it brought back so many memories of where actually we didn't always play particularly well, but it was team spirit, it was physicality, it was energy, desire to win that got us those 102 points. Was it 102? Wasn't it? Yeah. So, and if we can recreate that sort of style of play and do what Sturrock did, set up differently away from home, because how on earth are we going to get away results if we don't? How many goals we scored this away from home? Is it 8? I think it's 8. It's hopeless.
It's an incredible.
And yet we're 4-5 scorers at home. It's a bizarre stat. But we've got to go. I reminisce about Paul Sturrock, but that was a very effective way. Direct football, more direct than some might remember, but set up differently away and go for it at home. And that, if we do that next season, I'll be much happier.
Right. Well, that's after an hour and 7 minutes of almost continual moaning. Sam, are you wearing your new coat to Home Park on Saturday?
You know what? I probably will, because the weather's going to get a little bit colder again at the weekend. So yeah, I probably will be. It was a bit warm for it for the Norwich game, so I didn't wear it. But yes, I will be. Yeah.
But Sam, you
highlight.
I had the rare privilege of actually seeing it, so to speak, in the flesh, and I can safely report Donald Trump won't be offering any tariffs on that sort of jacket.
What brand is the jacket?
It was a Lacoste, possibly made somewhere in China as a rip-off. Sam, would that be right?
Oh no, it was certainly not a rip-off. If you watch the vlog, he picked it out from a very reputable store. It was
well, I don't know. These Chinese importers get everywhere, don't they? And no wonder Donald's worried about them. But I did notice Miram Music in one of his press conferences had exactly the same colour and same logos. So you're following in his footsteps. But it was an impressive sight, and I think you even asked for an autograph, weren't you, when I was talking to you?
It was a picture rather than an autograph.
Oh, was it? All right, okay. But...
Well, despite my moans about him, I think Miran Muslic is a much more fashionable man than I am, and I think he pulled off his coat much better than I do as well. So fair play.
I think that's the truest statement you've made all night, Sam, to be fair.
Thank you.
He may not like the style of football, but he loves the style of garms.
Yeah.
So what we said, let's just wrap up. I don't really want to talk about Sheffield United too much. Why don't we just do our score predictions and get on with our lives? Sam?
Well, I know maybe something on the return of Cooper, maybe? Do we think he'll get a good reception?
Yeah, definitely.
I think he will, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Seems like we all agree on that then. So, yeah, fine. Okay. Okay. Sheffield United. There's a little bit of me that thinks Argyle are going to just do the most Argyle possible thing ever and win. Now we've all had a big long moan. But thinking rationally, I do think Sheffield United are a squad who can very much out physical us. They're a perfect example of, without wanting to hammer my agenda too much, they're an example of a squad who can be direct and can be physical without sacrificing playing football as well. Yes, I know it helps. You've got the biggest budget in the league, but even so, I think that they're a tactical template we can maybe learn from. So I do think they're a team who can cause us problems. They are direct, they are powerful, they can kind of out Muslich maybe, if you like, as well as having a very talented squad. That being said, they are right on the heels of a big wobble. They've just lost 2 in a row away to Oxford and home to Millwall. They've gone from looking at clipping Leeds' heels for the title to now being out of the top 3 altogether. So they're not in a great place going into this game either. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Is it inevitable that we win and
of course it is.
Hope returns once again? They just
want to give us that tantalising glint of hope every other game, which seems to be the pattern, isn't it? So, I mean, I just had a scenario where it's a 0-0, not very attractive game to watch, and then we get a penalty with 10 minutes to go and Hardy's still on the pitch, and it's Hardy v Cooper. Which way is he going to go? I actually think, against all the odds, I think we might pull this off 1-0. I don't know why. And then we get hammered at Middlesbrough.
It's inevitable. I'm going to go again. Sam always goes 1-1 when I'm on, so I'm going to go 2-1 Argyle. Yeah, again, keep the hope alive. Just keep us hurting for as long as possible.
That's it. That's the masochistic way that we're used to.
Well, everyone can catch that 12:30 on Saturday. It's an early kickoff after a Wednesday game, so we'll probably be as depleted as we can be in terms of energy levels. So, Sam's
very quick things. We always do this when somebody joins midstream. Big thanks to Stevie Watson, who's joined us as a new channel member tonight. So I did make a little note of that one to say, but just before we go, thank you very much to Stevie Watson for joining as a channel member.
Great admin, and for some admin that I never do like and subscribe. That's what people who host podcasts say on YouTube and also other podcasting channels. I'll be at Home Park on Saturday for my sins. So, with that, come on, you Greens.
Thanks very much. Goodbye.